Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, don't look now, but the team is 5-5 after getting a victory over the New York Jets at Allegiant Stadium Sunday Night Football. Primetime action. We'll break down the game and a whole lot more on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, November 13th, 2023.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won, and won, and won, and won, and won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. Of course, if you're checking us out on YouTube, we appreciate you, and we appreciate my man Ari. Without Ari, the show is not up on YouTube each and every day, and we definitely appreciate that. So shout out to my man Ari. You can check him out on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254, and we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. Won't have any calls or texts on today's show. We'll take you inside the Raiders locker room in segment number 3 following the Raiders' 16-12 victory over the Jets. Got to catch up with a few of the players, so I want you to hear from them immediately after the victory. Segment number 2, we'll hand out game balls. We'll do one on offense, one on defense, and one on special teams, and we'll explain why. That'll be in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, just give you the breakdown of how the Raiders arrived at the 16-12 victory, improving their overall record of 5-5 and now sit at second place in the AFC West. Before we do that, though, I do want you to know today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. I'll tell you a lot more about them later on the show. And off top, I do want to apologize for getting up the show a little bit later than normal. Usually I have the show up super early in the morning, around right after midnight, but did not get home from Allegiant Stadium till super late Sunday night and immediately tried to knock out the show. So got up a little bit later than normal as far as having the podcast up. So I apologize, but well worth it, as the Raiders are now 5-5 after a 16-12 victory over the Jets. One that was very well earned. It was hard fought. Points were at a minimal, and the Raiders came out on the right side of things. And Antonio Pierce, as the interim head coach, is now 2-0 on the season. We'll talk to him a little bit later on this morning around 11 o'clock at the Intermountain Health Performance Center, see what he has to say about his silver and black squad that is 2-0 under him, and they get ready to go to Miami for a road trip against the Dolphins. That is going to be a very tough one, but we'll talk about the Dolphins later on in the week. Do want to go ahead and give you the numbers of how the Raiders arrived at the 16-12 victory, who stood out, who didn't. First for Aiden O'Connell, 16 for 27, 153 yards and a touchdown. He also had an interception and was sacked 3 times. So against the Giants, he didn't turn the ball over at all, and he wasn't sacked at all. Well, against the Jets and that strong defense, you knew it was going to be a lot more difficult for the rookie, and you knew the Jets were going to throw a lot at him defensively, and they did. And the offensive line was overwhelmed at times. Colton Miller did not play. The left tackle was out. It was something that we kind of expected throughout the course of the week. We had talked about him not practicing and the fact that if he could not go, Jermaine Illuminor would have to kick over to the left side, Thayer Mumford on the right, and that's exactly what happened. So the Raiders were, like I said, under siege. That offensive line was under siege the whole game. Gave up those 3 sacks. Aiden O'Connell lost 27 yards. So total yards passing, he really ended up with 126 if you take away those sack yardages, and then the interception. And that was something that I thought that the Raiders couldn't do. You can't throw an interception. You can't turn the ball over. You can't lose the turnover battle. The Raiders did lose the turnover battle, but they still found a way to win the game, and you got to give them a lot of credit for that. But the Jets, again, like I said, their defense is just so stinking difficult to score on and play against that, you knew that there was probably going to be a mistake or two made by the silver and black. Devontae Adams was in the mix early in the game, 6 catches, 86 yards, had a long of 42 yards on 13 targets. But again, that was a lot of action super early in the game. There was a couple times Sauce Gardner got away with holding on him. And it's funny, man, Sauce has been getting away with holding his whole rookie year. He got away with holding. That's what everybody complained about. Like, wait, hold on. Did they not see him holding all the time? And there was a couple that were very blatant on Devontae Adams that he got away with. And Devontae was visibly pretty upset about that. But still, 6 catches, 86 yards with a long of 42. Josh Jacobs did the heavy lifting again, 27 carries, 116 yards with a long of 40. And I'll tell you, it looked like Josh Jacobs was going to have a very pedestrian day as far as running goes. And then finally, late in the game, he broke out and had a nice 40-yard run and set the Raiders up on their touchdown drive that they had, their only touchdown of the game. The only touchdown of the game, period, was on that drive, and it ended up being an Aiden O'Connell to Michael Mayer touchdown catch where Michael Mayer went up and mossed Whitehead, the defender, and that was the only touchdown. That was Michael Mayer's first touchdown of his career, so that was kind of cool to see that. Defensively, the Raiders got 2 sacks on the night, one from Malcolm Kuntz and one from Robert Spillane. And if you're keeping track at home like I am, 26 sacks on the season, 9 interceptions through 10 games. So not too bad, right? Something that we talked about a lot. They got to get more pressures on the quarterback, more sacks on the quarterback, and they've got to be able to turn the ball over. They were able to do that. Again, Josh Jacobs, I mentioned the carries that he had, 27 carries, 116 yards, long of 40. He also had a fumble late in the game that ultimately did not come back to haunt the Raiders. Robert Spillane came up with a big interception while the Jets were driving. So they didn't give up any points on that, but it was a little bit scary. A little bit scary at that time. It looked like that possibly the Jets were going to drive and score and win the game, and that was going to be on Josh Jacobs on that fumble that he had late in the game as he was just trying to pick up a few extra yardage. I think really the story of the game, even though we could talk about what the Raiders did and how they were able to overcome and the fact that the defense didn't allow any touchdowns on the day, and that's all fantastic. That's all fine and good. The Jets had 365 yards of offense, no touchdowns. They had to settle for 4 field goals. The main reason, 8 penalties for 83 yards. And it seemed like every time they had a big play, it was a holding penalty. Every time they had a big play, it was a chop block. Every time they had a big play, it was something that would make it come back. And I felt like they were really winning the game, and it was out of control score. It felt like they were really beating the Raiders pretty badly early in the game. But because all those penalties, all that lack of discipline, all those self-inflicted wounds, they were allowing the Raiders to hang around, and ultimately the Raiders won. The Raiders only had 3 penalties for 25 yards accepted. So the Raiders were the cleaner team. And it's funny, I bring that up, and I really want to emphasize those penalties and the penalty yards and how it felt like the game should have been out of control and that the Jets should have really just ran away and hit with that game. Because how many times have the Raiders been in that position? How many times have you seen the Raiders look like they completely dominated a game? The Jets had 365 yards of offense and didn't score 1 touchdown. Even when it looked like they scored a touchdown, Zach Wilson had stepped out of bounds before he dove into the end zone. It's like there was always something that they did as a self-inflicted wound. And there's so many times that the Raiders are the ones that are doing that. And on Sunday, that wasn't the case. It was the Jets. And so, again, I don't know if that's the Antonio Pierce effect. I don't know if that's just the Raiders playing cleaner, but they did play a cleaner game. They played a lot cleaner game, and ultimately that's how they won the game. Those 8 penalties for 83 yards that the Jets were charged with was just too much to overcome for a team that's offense is just not good. So, that was, in my opinion, really the key to the success of the Silver and Black. Real quick, wanted to go over my keys to victory that I rolled out on Friday's show and just really quickly see what the Raiders did and see what the Jets did. My first key was stop the run first and foremost because the Raiders were allowing 138.7 yards per game on the ground. It's funny, the Jets had 108 yards rushing, but most of that actually came from Zach Wilson scrambling. 4 carries, 54 yards. As far as the running backs go, Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook, Hall only had 13 carries for 28 yards. Dalvin Cook, 4 carries for 26 yards. So they did great against those guys. But when they were in coverage and they would have Zach Wilson scrambling around, Max Crosby would be chasing him around, Zach would be able to get out of there and pick up some big-time yardage. So he got 54 yards on his own. But Breece Hall, the big-time running back that I thought was going to do some big-time damage against the Raiders, only had 28 yards rushing, and Dalvin Cook only had 26. So I think the Raiders did a really good job holding those two guys under what they're used to getting, right? And holding the Jets under what they're used to getting on the ground. Also, another key number B or letter B, run the ball effectively like they did against the Giants. Again, the Jets are allowing 137 yards per game on the ground. The Raiders and Jets, it's funny, the Raiders ranked 32nd in stopping the run, and the Jets ranked 31. So you're like, okay, there's going to be a lot of running in the game. And the Raiders started the game with a bunch of passing. They didn't even start trying to run the ball early. They tried to loosen everything up by the pass game. Didn't really work too much. The Raiders ultimately ended up with 148 on the ground, led by Josh Jacobs, who had 116. But he was he only had about 40 yards rushing through about three quarters or almost at the end of the third quarter. Then he had that big 40-yard run, started to loosen things up a little bit, ended the game with 116 yards rushing. That's his first 100-yard rushing game of the season. So well done for the Silver and Black on the ground. Again, 148 total yards as the Jets were allowing 137 yards. So not only did the Raiders hit the Jets' average as far as rushing yards, but they went over. And then C, protect the ball. If they lose a turnover battle, they most likely will lose the game. And this is the one that I was really wrong on. The Raiders turned it over twice. The Jets only turned it over once. The Jets only scored once off the turnovers, and the Raiders found a way to win. Right, the Raiders scored off a turnover, or no, they didn't score off a turnover. They only had one turnover. That was at the end. Spillane saved the day, really, with the interception, and then the Raiders tried to run out the clock, and they had a third down play where they tried to pass the ball to pick up a first down and win the game, and the Jets, you just got to give them a lot of credit for knocking the ball down. So they stopped the clock. A.J. Cole punts back to them, and they drive down the field, got to the Raiders' 40, and then on the last play of the game, Max Crosby's chasing Zach Wilson around like a madman, and Zach Wilson throws a nice Hail Mary to the end zone that almost came up with a play. Garrett Wilson almost came up with the big play in the end zone, and the Raiders were able to knock the ball down. Trayvon Merrick helped get the ball to the ground as well, and they come away with a 16-12 victory, improved to 5-5 overall, and I'm telling you, the Raiders have gone through a lot of trials and tribulations, a very roller coaster feel to the season through 10 games. But through 10 games, they're 5-5. They're right there in the thick of things. It's just it's crazy to think that as much has gone on, they've already fired their coach and fired their GM, but yet they're sitting in second place in the AFC West, and that's exactly the reason why Mark Davis made the move when he did, because he knew there was still plenty of season left. And if the Raiders could find a way to get right, they could be right in the mix, and they are right in the mix as they're sitting there 5-5 and getting ready to make a trip to Miami, and then they'll be back to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. But great team victory as far as I'm concerned. It was a big-time fight. I asked multiple players in the locker room, how tough was it out there, and every one of them to a T was like, man, that was a very tough game against a very physical, stingy Jets defense, and even the offense, they played very physical as well, and the offensive line made life very difficult for Max Crosby. They did everything they could to make sure Max didn't wreck the game, and luckily for the Silver and Black, other guys were able to step up, like a Malcolm Kuntz, like a Robert Spillane. Other guys were able to make nice open field tackles, like Nate Hobbs made a couple nice open field tackles. Tyler Hall made a nice open field tackle. Guys were able to step up and be effective when the usual suspects, Max Crosby, wasn't able to get home and get sacks. He did get one time, he forced Zach Wilson into intentional grounding, but that's not registered as a sack. So there you go. The Raiders 16-12 victors over the Jets, improved to 5-5 overall. So who's going to get a game ball? Coming up in segment number 2, we hand one out offensively, defensively, and special teams, and we'll explain why. We'll do in segment number 2 after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Gametime. And I don't know if you were looking for tickets to the game and wanted to go see some Sunday Night Football, some primetime action. Well, if you were looking for tickets and couldn't find them, you could have gone to Gametime. You can get last-minute tickets for very reasonable prices. Matter of fact, you could even get tickets about an hour into the event if you go through Gametime. Last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. So it doesn't matter if you're going to a sporting event, a musical, a comedy, you want to go check out some theater, whatever the case may be, Gametime's got the hookup for you. Views from all the seats in the venue, lowest price guaranteed, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and a whole lot more. Right now, all you got to do is download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL, all caps, for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to hand out game balls. I'm going to hand one out offensively, defensively, and special teams. Explain why. And I'll tell you, when a game is 16-12, there's not a lot of offensive firepower. The Raiders only came up with one turnover on the day. There wasn't a whole lot of sacks from the Raiders. It's very difficult to just kind of narrow down who deserves the game balls, except for it's not. Right? I mean, for me, 3 guys really stood out in a major way, so I'm going to go ahead and hand those out, and feel free to chime in and hand out game balls if you'd like as well at 707-654-4693. Coming up tomorrow, we'll get to those calls and texts, so you'll be able to hear feedback from members of Raider Nation on who they'd like to hand game balls out to. But offensively, I'll start with Michael Mayer. Right? He had his first NFL touchdown, the rookie out of Notre Dame. He caught the ball over Jordan Whitehead. He really mossed him in the end zone in a play that Aiden O'Connell made a hell of a throw. You got to give Aiden O'Connell a lot of credit. He just was able to move around in the pocket a little bit and put a ball in a position where only Michael Mayer could make the play, and he did. He went up there with his hands and caught him. And look, that's what you expect from Michael Mayer. Like, that's what I expect to see from Michael Mayer. That's what I thought he was going to do. When I talked about what he could do coming out of Notre Dame and said he'll be effective in the red zone, that's what I expected, that he's going to have plays like that. He's going to have times where he can go down to the goal line and just make himself available, similar to what Travis Kelce does for the Chiefs. Just kind of post up at the goal line, catch the ball, and fall into the end zone. Like, that's how I'm expecting the Raiders to use him, and it's nice to see that they were able to do that on Sunday against the Jets, and that starts to show what he can do, and it starts to show, and you'll hear from him. Matter of fact, coming up in segment number 3 of today's show, he's getting more mature. He's getting more comfortable every day in practice. Every day he goes into a game, you could just tell that he's starting to feel the position just a little bit more, and it's a learning curve, right? Tight end position is not easy in the NFL as a rookie, and so he's trying to figure it out. And, oh, by the way, Aiden O'Connell's a rookie as well. He's trying to figure it out. But the chemistry between them is growing. The chemistry between Aiden O'Connell and Trey Tucker is growing. And I think everybody in that offensive side of the Raiders locker room is really feeling what Aiden O'Connell is doing and really appreciates what he's doing. So, again, I'm not guaranteeing that he's going to be the full-time quarterback. Like, it's going to be his job moving forward beyond this season, but he's taking advantage of every opportunity that he has. So the first game ball definitely goes to Michael Mayer, getting his first career touchdown and the only touchdown that was registered in the game Sunday Night Football. So you got to go ahead and give him a game ball, right? There's no doubt. So defensively, if the Raiders only came up with one turnover and it was one that was super important, that guy's got to get the game ball as well. Robert Spillane, another guy you'll hear from coming up in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Big interception, and it's so funny, and you can go back and check my Twitter if you want. I was sitting in the press box, and I was sitting next to Lindsey Brown from the Morning Tailgate on Raider Nation Radio 920, and I told her, and then I tweeted it, and I said, man, the Raiders need a big defensive play right now. Like, they need to create a turnover or something. I said, and there's always big plays happen in this end zone. Like, there's always, every time they're defending that end zone, something big happens. You know, you go back and you saw the Green Bay Packers game when Amik Robertson came up with that big interception at the end of the game. It was defending that same end zone. You go back to last week against the Giants. Amik Robertson comes up with that big interception at the goal line and returns it back to the 40, same end zone. You go back to what game was it? The Patriots game when Max Crosby and Bilal Nichols comes up with a safety. It was in that end zone. Hell, you go back to last season. Chandler Jones gets the ball after Jacoby Myers throws it back against the Patriots. Remember, he goes up and gets it, and then he face plants Mac Jones in the ground and scores a touchdown. That end zone, right? It's always that end zone towards the black hole that something big is happening. So fast forward to the game on Sunday, I tweeted out, the Raiders defense needs to come up with a big play, and they're defending the end zone that they make that happen. They usually come up with one. And the very next play, Robert Spillane came up with an interception. And Lindsey looked at me like, oh, my God, did you just say that? And so, again, you can go back and look on my Twitter account, at your boy Q254. I'm not making this up. I called it the play before it happened, and it's just funny. It is not because I'm some genius. It's just because I've been noticing, and I even asked Nate Hobbs about that in that end zone, something always happens. There's always a big play that the Raiders make in that end zone. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then I was talking to Jason Horowitz in the Raiders locker room following the game, and he said, yeah, that's even the same end zone that Keelan Cole had that big catch against the Patriots last season as well, that tied the game up, Derek Carr to Keelan Cole, and his foot was barely in bounds, or really couldn't tell if it was inbounds, out of bounds, but he got the touchdown because it kind of blended in with the goal line. That was in that end zone as well. That end zone, for some reason, is really magical for the Raiders. So I guess if you need a big play, hope that the Raiders are defending that end zone, or hope that, I don't know, just good things happen towards that end zone. So Robert Spillane, there's no doubt about it, came up with a big interception when the Raiders needed it the most, plus he had a sack on the night as well. So defensively, he gets a game ball. And so for special teams, I could always say, A.J. Cole, because he flips the field, and he did the same thing on Sunday, did a great job flipping the field. I think he had 5 punts on the day. He had the long of 63 yards. I mean, he did A.J. Cole type things. Daniel Carlson, he was 3 for 3 when it comes to field goals, and obviously points were hard to come by for both teams on Sunday, so I could easily go with Daniel Carlson. Again, he had a long of 54 yards, so that was pretty impressive as well. But I want to go with DeAndre Carter. He had 3 punt returns for 49 yards, but the long of 32 really helped set the Raiders up for a scoring drive, and it felt like the whole night that he was a threat. It felt like every time he got his hands on the ball, there was a chance. Even though on the kick returns, he only got to the 25, maybe got a little bit past the 25, but it just felt like he was a threat. I had a couple people even tweet at me, say, Q, I think he's going to take one to the house before the game's over. He didn't, but he was that presence back there. So I want to give DeAndre Carter a really good a game ball for a really good job done as far as punt returns, just special teams in general. And then at the end of the game as well, had a nice little, it was a 4th and 1 play, and Bo Hardigree called this kind of, it was almost like a jet sweep. But it looked like it was going to be an Aiden O'Connell 4th and 1 sneak, and instead he doesn't sneak it at all. He hands it to DeAndre Carter, and he goes around the corner for about 15 yards. But that was offensively. But special team-wise, I definitely want to go ahead and hand him a game ball. So those are the 3 game balls I'm handing out. Offensively, Michael Mayer for the only touchdown of the game and his first career touchdown. Defensively, Robert Spillane, the interception came right in time when the Raiders needed it the most, plus had a sack on the night. And DeAndre Carter, 3 punt returns, 49 yards, long of 32. Real quick, going back to Robert Spillane, and this is something that I wish I had known before I got a chance to talk to him in the Raiders locker room. He said after the game he was talking to the Sunday Night Football crew, and he told them that him and his wife are expecting a baby, and apparently they said, oh, that's cool or something like that. The wife texted me immediately. She was watching the game on TV, and she was like, oh, Spillane's about to have a baby, but I had my phone on airplane mode because I was doing locker room interviews, so I didn't get that text until after I left the locker room. If I had done that, if I had gotten it, I would have, said, hey, congratulations. I hear that, you guys are expecting a baby, and, you just said it on the broadcast, and I'm sure that would have got a really good response. Matter of fact, one of my questions that I asked him, he started to get a little bit of emotional in it. You'll hear it coming up in segment number 3. So that probably would have been a good little soundbite from Spillane if I had mentioned the fact that he had a baby on the way. But hopefully sometime this week we'll get an opportunity to talk to him and congratulate him and, all that. But that dude just loves him some football. So there you go. Michael Mayer, offensively, Robert Spillane, defensively, DeAndre Carter, special teams wise. And we give a big special shout out to Robert Spillane and his wife for expecting a baby I believe he said in June. So that's really cool. Excited for them. Coming up in segment number 3, you'll hear from Robert Spillane. You'll hear from Michael Mayer. And if we have times, you'll hear from Nate Hobbs as well. That's all coming up in segment number 3 after I tell you about FanDuel. Right now, you can score this NFL season with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins, just like that. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, good. You should. There's no better time to get in on the action than right now. So it's only, 10 weeks into the season. I don't know what you've been waiting for, but you can go ahead and knock that out and start jumping on with FanDuel. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and a whole lot more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get into the NFL season the right way with FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Here we go, Raider Nation. This is segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Normally, we jump into calls and texts here. We'll do that on tomorrow's show. We'll get into that, 707-654-4693. You can let me know who the game balls go to. You can let me know your reaction to the game, the job that you thought Antonio Pierce has done so far through 2 weeks. I'll say this real quick, too. Pretty cool as I'm walking to my car, leaving the stadium, and all of a sudden this 6'4" Impala drives right past me. Got a few folks in the car, and that's Coach Antonio Pierce. Like, that's really cool, and I know that that's been something that's been talked about already, even going back to last week against the Giants, that he rolls up to the stadium in a 6'4" Impala. But just to see him leaving the stadium, seeing people in his car with him, and seeing him drive down Polaris Ave as I'm, like I said, walking to the media parking lot to get to my car, just so cool. Really, I mean, and that doesn't make him a better coach, doesn't make him a better person. It's just kind of cool, right? It just is really cool to know that, a lot of the folks that are in the parking lot, in J Lot, that's right there next to where the Raiders, pull into the stadium, a lot of those folks that are in that parking lot, kind of have that same image. I mean, look, we know what Raider Nation's all about, right? Still got that same swag about them, all about the 6'4" Impalas, all about, the big body cars, and just all about just just that kind of lifestyle, and to know that the head coach, the interim head coach, is about that lifestyle as well is really awesome. So I thought it was really cool just to seeing him driving out and, honking at Raider Nation and really just embracing being the interim head coach right now, the Silver and Black, something I talked about last week on the show as well. But that was cool to see Sunday night. So let's go ahead and jump into some of the locker room sound from Sunday. And the first one's with Michael Mayer. I gave him a game ball offensively. He scored the only touchdown of the game. I actually got a chance to catch up with him one-on-one in the Raiders locker room following the 16-12 victory over the Jets. Here's that conversation. Here in the Raiders locker room with Michael Mayer, and you guys came out with a big victory, second one in a row. What has these last 2 weeks been for you?
Look, man, it's been about football for us. It's been about executing. It's been about bringing energy. It's been about having intent in practice, having intent in what you're doing, how you're blocking, getting a hat on a hat, things like that. And the past 2 weeks, look, we've been working our tail off in practice, and it showed in the game. Obviously, there were some struggles today, but it shows resiliency, it shows toughness to be able to pull out a win like that.
Against a really tough defense, obviously. There's only one touchdown scored in the whole game. You got in the corner of the end zone. What was that like, that ball coming in? You really mossed the defender. How did that feel?
Beautiful ball by Aiden. Beautiful ball by Aiden. He put it only where I could get it. It felt good. It felt tremendous. I'll be honest, I didn't even know that was like the only touchdown of the game. They just told me when the game was over, which is crazy. But it felt really good. I'm glad I kind of got my first one under my belt and, keep stacking them.
How have you felt you two really start to mature as rookies in the league, but now it's kind of in the back end of year one?
Yeah, I think tremendously. I think when you come to the NFL, it's a big adjustment, man. There's a lot of different things. There's a lot of defenses that are different than what you saw in college. Bigger players, faster players, things like that. So it takes you a couple games. I've really liked how Aiden's kind of matured over this entire season, and I feel like I have gotten a bit better in my blocking and my routes and things like that. But look, he's going to throw many, many more touchdowns than me, and it's going to be a great combo for however long we're here,
Final question for you. These last 2 weeks with AP, you mentioned the energy. What has that energy been like, and how do you see that moving forward?
We're happy to be out there, man. We're happy to practice. We're happy to be in the facility. We're happy to do it for that guy, man. He's a Raiders dude through and through, and, you want to be having fun when you're out here playing football.
Right.
That's one of the key things: smiling, having fun, playing with energy, playing with passion. That's something these past 2 weeks I've really kind of been able to do, is go out there and play with passion and actually enjoy it. And that's what he preaches. That's what we preach. That's what the captains preach. And it's been great. It's been fun.
Well, congratulations on the win.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you. Yep. So I said it before when I had a little Michael Mayer sound on the show, that you could just hear him getting more comfortable. You could see him getting more comfortable. You hear him talking about his blocking. You hear him talking about growing with Aiden O'Connell. Right, and he's going to throw way more touchdowns to me than just that. So I mean, that relationship is growing really well. Both guys rookies, obviously, and he's going to end up being a big time leader on this Raiders team. You could just feel it that Michael Mayer is definitely trending in the right way. And the play that you saw him make, him going up and making that touchdown catch over Jordan Whitehead, that is what Michael Mayer is a part of the Raiders for. That you want to start to see more plays in the red zone and in the end zone for rookie tight end Michael Mayer. Defensively, Robert Spillane, he got the game ball because, he came up with a big interception, had a sack. The guy is just fun to watch. He's leading the team in interceptions right now. He's got 3. And, the funny thing about it is, and people remind me all the time, and I'm okay with that the question mark about Robert Spillane as when the Raiders signed him was, he's good at stopping the run, but he can't drop in coverage, right? That was the big concern. I talked about it. Everybody that I talked to that covers Spillane at Pittsburgh said, oh, yeah, he's going to frustrate the hell out of you because he's not very good in coverage. So, yeah, he can stop the run, but, he's going to cost the team when it comes to coverage. And all he's doing right now is leading the team in interceptions with 3, right? And the interception he came up with on Sunday was huge. Right when the Raiders needed it the most, he came up with that big play. And he's always asked about, dropping in coverage, and you'll hear it in this little the sound from the Raiders locker room as well. And he takes that as a slight. He's not a fan of it because he knows that that's a knock on him. But he's worked his tail off since being a member of the Raiders. They're using him a little bit differently than they use him in Pittsburgh, and he's been excelling. So look, again, I brought the breakdown of who Robert Spillane is before we got an opportunity to really see him and get to know him. And he's he took that breakdown of who he is and, threw that out the window, threw it in the trash. It was like, no, Q, I'm going to be really good in coverage. And he was. And everyone to a T will tell you that he was going to be bad in coverage, and he hasn't been. He's been just what the Raiders needed, and again, leads the team in interceptions right now with 3. So following the game, we were looking around for him. We couldn't find him. We were asking everyone, hey, wait, hold on. Got to have Robert Spillane. He came up with the big interception, man. We got to talk to him. There you go. We finally got a chance to catch up with Robert Spillane in the Raiders locker room. Here's that conversation.
How's it feel, and what'd you see in that interception right there?
Yeah, Raider football. We're going to keep coming at you. We're going to be blue collar, hard nose, and rely on each other, trust the family, and just keep pushing forward.
What did you see on that interception?
Yeah, I saw Zach Wilson drop back, saw a little route concept into the boundary. Divine Diablo did a great job making him double pump on the throw, which gave me time to get there. So just good team defense.
You talked about turnovers and the importance of it, the mindset of it. Is that kind of an example of that?
I always say turnovers change the complexion of a game. There's not much difference between a 2-yard gain and a 4-yard gain. It's very minimal, but when you get those turnovers, you change the complexion of a football game. So we were able to come up with 2 big ones and helped us win.
You said before that you like to have the defense on and it be on you guys. You have to make that play. What did it feel like making that play?
It's a dream come true. I poured my heart into this football.
Yeah.
So to be able to help my team win is a blessing.
What does it say about your guys' grit and resilience, to the team?
Yeah, I think it says that we have a bunch of guys that want to win. And our will to win is very strong, and we're just going to keep pushing forward. A lot of unknown going forward. We're 5-5. We're in a good place. I think we're really meshing as a locker room, so I'm very thankful to be here.
You entered here with 1 interception in your career. What do you feel has been the difference for you? I mean, you got 3 now just this season alone.
Great team defense. It doesn't happen without the guys around me. They've been making huge plays. One of the interceptions against Green Bay, Marcus Peters tipped it right to me. Divine Diablo does a great job making the quarterback double pump. So none of this happens alone. You got to trust the guys around you and play team defense, so we're going to continue to do that.
Kind of along those same lines, a lot of people had you pegged as just kind of the run, dunk, run, stuffer type of guy. How much pride do you take in excelling in the passing game in that sense?
I don't know. That feels like a dig on me, but I'm just going to keep pushing forward.
You have 4 turnovers on the season now. When's the last time you did that? Was it high school or?
I really don't keep stats. I don't keep trophies. I go forward, and none of this means anything tomorrow. We got the win. We came here, what we accomplished to do. None of my interceptions means anything going forward. So we got to reestablish ourselves every weekend, and we look to do that in Miami. So
what has it been like with AP as the head coach when he was your linebacker coach?
He's been the same guy. He's going to continue to be himself. Unapologetically, and that's all you can ask for out of a head coach. He's going to pour his heart into our team, into getting us wins, and nothing more you can ask for.
Just a few days ago, everyone was kind of marveling at the fact that you broke your hand, had surgery, and you had not missed a single snap in the last 2 games despite that. And then you come out today and have an interception. I guess my question is how? How do you do that?
I'm a football player. Football players play football games. They play hurt, they play injured. I learned that at a very young age. Most people think you have to play hurt but not injured. You have to play injured. You got to play with broken fingers. You got to play with a broken hand. You got to play with a torn MCL. It's an honor and a privilege to go out there, so I never want to miss any opportunity to be on the field.
AP looked like he might have been more fired up than anyone for your interception. What was it like to see him?
AP is a passionate 2-time Super Bowl champion who's done a great job leading us so far in the very short time he has been our leader. I look up to him, and I'm very thankful he's our head coach.
So there you go right there. Robert Spillane in the Raiders locker room after the game, and you can hear him get somewhat emotional when I'm talking about being out there and being responsible and trying to close the game out. And he said before that he wants to be out there. Max Crosby says he wants to be out there to be able to help close games out. And so Robert Spillane came up with a big play, huge play, and really should have sealed the deal, even though the Jets got the ball back and had an opportunity late in the game to score. Should have ended it, but it put them in a really good position to turn around and win the game that they ultimately did. I guess we have enough time real quick to get to Nate Hobbs. Here's Nate Hobbs. It's mainly me it's me at the beginning, and then a couple others jump in towards the later part of the conversation. But another guy that's been out there really busting his tail is Nate Hobbs, especially when it comes to open field tackles. He's really good at that. Here's a chance to catch up with him in the Raiders locker room following the 16-12 victory over the New York Jets. Here in the Raiders locker room with Nate Hobbs. And Nate, how tough of a fought battle was that game?
To the end, to the bone, you know what I'm saying? We knew coming in it was gonna be that type of game, though.
What's it been like the last 2 weeks? Been at home, had a lot of energy, had the crowd behind you, and found ways to get W's.
I think it was everything we needed as a team, as men, as a unit. You know what I'm saying? It was just everything we needed, and we brought that energy. And the crowd's been matching our energy. It's been amazing.
What is it about that end zone when you guys are defending that big plays happen? Amik's got a couple in that end zone. Max and Bilal had the safety in that end zone. Spillane comes up with a big interception defending that end zone. What is it about that side?
Magic. Oh, God, this is blessings. You know what I'm saying? He with us at all times.
With that kind of momentum now, you got a 2-game winning streak, and you know you got to head to Miami. What does it feel, the locker room? We see the cigars again.
Just celebrate tonight. Tomorrow, you know what I'm saying, 24-hour rule. Tomorrow, back to work. You know what I'm saying? Win or lose, we was going to be back to work anyway. So celebrating, we back to work. We just going to carry this momentum into that week.
Did you get your hand on that ball in the end zone on the Hail Mary?
I couldn't even tell you. I was backing up like, I'm going to end the game. And 17 great players came across the field. I didn't even see them. And tried to, catch the ball, and I can't even tell you. I'd be lying if I said I did.
You can just take credit for it if you want. You knocked it down.
I'm going to be a stand-up kid.
How important was this win for team morale to get this back-to-back and against a good defense as well?
I feel like it was just what we needed to get us back on track, get our confidence back, you know what I'm saying? Because I've been saying this in game one. We could play with anybody. We know we can compete with anybody. And we showed the world. We knew, but we showed the world and put the NFL on notice, I feel like.
They call Spillane a hard hat guy. That's what Coach said about him this week, and the toughness. That obviously showed kind of towards the end of the game there. What did you see your thoughts on his interception and what he did for the team?
When you approach the game, the way he approached the game, just the way you're supposed to approach the game every day, he come in, does his job, make sure the defense is on him, make sure we on him, bring the same energy every day. He loves football. So when you attack it the way he attack it, you just reap the benefits that you're supposed to. And, y'all seen that.
So there you go. Nate Hobbs in the Raiders locker room, and some really good stuff. We also got an opportunity to talk to Josh Jacobs. Also got an opportunity to talk to Devontae Adams, talk to a couple offensive linemen, talk to plenty of guys in the Raiders locker room, but definitely wanted to bring you those three here on the show. Michael Mayer and Spillane, because they're offense and defense. They were the guys I gave the game balls to. Didn't get a chance to catch up with DeAndre Carter. Would have liked to catch up with Carter in the locker room, but he got out of there pretty quick, fast, and in a hurry. So that's going to do it for today's show, Raider Nation. Again, we'll talk to Coach Pierce a little bit later on this morning around 11 o'clock at the Intermountain Health Performance Center. Whatever he says that's good, we'll bring back to the podcast tomorrow. We'll also get into calls and texts, and we'll have plenty of more conversation around the Silver and Black as they are now 5-5 on the season through 10 games. So that's going to do it for today's show. Until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.